Good morning, everyone. If you can hear me, please post your name in chat. Okay, awesome, awesome. And just so you know, too, we are also live streaming on several channels. I want to say thank you so much for coming out. Want to say welcome. I'm not able to show my face on screen, given the, I guess, low frequency or whatever. I'm not a techie, but I don't have enough bandwidth to actually, display a strong picture. So just gonna leave us where we are. All right. So I will give people one more minute to come in, and then we will get started. Good morning. Good morning. I also want to upload a workbook. This is a workbook that follows this presentation, and it will serve you well, I hope, after the presentation. So what it does is, it'll help you really, really flesh out some burning questions you may have had, and definitely think about some issues that you should consider. So often we start our businesses, we start our nonprofits, we know there's a need, we know we have certain skills, but if we are honest, we will say, that if we could have done something different, you know, we would have done it differently based on what we know now. If we knew then what we know now, we would do something different. All right, can someone answer and let me know if you see that workbook in the chat? I just want to make sure that everybody has access to that workbook. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Rhonda. Definitely appreciate that. All righty. And just so you know, too, I am not going to be able to see your questions. I'm going to ask that if you have questions as we go along, thank you so much, Tanisha. It's great to quote unquote see you. All righty. So, again, I'm not going to be able to see you, right, as I present. So as you have questions, please post them in the chat. And after the presentation, I will answer them all. All right. So we will get started right now. All right. And again, thank you so much for showing up. Alrighty, so I am going to share with you a list of questions that I think many of us should have asked ourselves if we have ever run a nonprofit organization, or even if we've run a business. Some of these same principles apply if we are in business for ourselves. I think we know our communities, we have been around, we have a feeling that we quote unquote know what people need, but do we really, right? And then too, I find with nonprofits, starting a nonprofit business is a whole lot more complicated than just getting out there, putting your shingle up if you're doing a for-profit business. And I'm not saying either one is easy, but if I had to choose between the two, I would definitely say that starting and running a nonprofit is definitely much more complex, right? There's a lot of regulations out there, a lot of disclosure that is necessary that you have to share, in exchange for not being able to pay taxes. And many of us, we get out there and we're like, oh my goodness, what in the world? What in the world have I gotten myself into? So, this presentation will help you understand what it is you're getting into. I can't say that it is a remedy, but you will definitely start in a position of knowledge, right? And hopefully by the end of this, you will know, you know, what questions you should be asking. You'll go into this with your eyes wide open, and even if you look at this and say, "Oh my goodness, I didn't realize it was that complicated. I'm out of here. I'm going to do this for profit, or I'll just be happy donating money to other people." Either way, if you can make an informed decision, I will have done my job. All right. So, again, the name of this presentation is Before You Start 31 Critical Questions You Need to Ask Before, emphasis, before starting a nonprofit. And don't feel bad if you've already started one. You will not be the first person to have started an organization without having all the pieces together. In fact, most of us don't, right? So we got a lot to cover. I'll give you a brief overview of who Nonprofit Utopia is, a little bit about myself. I'll share some upcoming events that are related to starting a nonprofit organization. I will go over those 31 critical questions, then we will go over the Q&A, and then we will wrap up. I don't believe we'll need the whole 90 minutes. I did reserve 90 minutes just in case. All right. So, just to give you a little bit about Nonprofit Utopia, we are the ideal community for leaders who want to start organizations, manage them, and grow them. And we provide assistance in a number of ways. In fact, our mission is to train the next generation of ethical nonprofit leaders. And the way we do this is through an online community where you can come and have discussions, have your questions answered. We also provide special events from time to time. We want to get that down pat to a monthly schedule where we will do in person as well as online events to strengthen your networking, also strengthen your your comfort. You'll be around people who are going through similar circumstances, right? We have an online course. We have a couple online courses that are in the online community. We are rolling out for the first time a course on Learn Worlds, which will show you step by step how to start a nonprofit organization, not only looking at the legal forms, but, sharing with you some practical tips for starting and running the nonprofit. And at the end of the day, you will have filed all of your papers at the state and federal levels. You will have an organization that is legally viable, as well as have a case for support and be ready to fundraise. So I think that's pretty exciting. And then in terms of consulting, from time to time, I will help people. I do some grant writing. I'm pretty good at it, but that's not the main business for me. I teach grant writing more so than write proposals. I do help people do assessments of their organizations from the top down, do leadership assessments, do what we call DISC assessments, personality assessments to help you strengthen your teams, strategic planning, program planning and management, and that kind of thing. So anything as it relates to capacity building and leadership development. That's what I do consulting on. And for people who want to do a deeper dive, I also do coaching. All right. So, again, you feel free to post any questions or comments that you might have. Um, and then, as far as my experience, I've been in nonprofit. Oh my goodness, it's probably over 30 years in one form or another. All right, and then if we include government, it's been even more than that. I've done some work in finance for the city of New York. I have also done work in finance here in Chicago with Mount Sinai Hospital, helping them to do expansion projects. I have started and running a nonprofit organization. I'm doing a spinoff of a grassroots organization. So I'm painfully aware of the growing pains. And some of you I've actually met as a result of running that nonprofit. And we've been, oh my goodness, we've been together for over 20 years, running around the community. All right. So that's a little bit about me. Again, it's not about me, it's about you and the questions that you might have. So we're going to go into those 31 questions, and then we will have some Q&A and wrap up. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Please know we are live streaming. While I would say this is a safe environment, we don't all know one another. So be judicious in the questions that you ask, but at the same time, make sure you get the information that you need. All right. All right. So, upcoming events, some of you know about these and others don't. Today, we are starting the first of a series of events for people who want to start, manage, and grow nonprofits. Our first webinar today is Before You Start, 31 Questions You Should Ask Before Starting a Nonprofit Organization. Next week on July 2nd, we will have our second free workshop, and that will be 13 Reasons the IRS Says No. You'll be amazed at the reasons why people can't get their tax exempt status the first time. In fact, some people continue to do it and they get discouraged and they just drop it. So we will start with start with those things that could go wrong, let you know what to look out for. And again, that's another free webinar. That's next week. And then on July 9th, we will show you how to incorporate a nonprofit without an attorney. So by the end of that session, you should be in pretty good shape, at least, especially if you live in the state of Illinois. We will show you how to fill out that form in a way that complies not only with the state of Illinois, but with, whatever, with the federal government. And if you happen to be here and you are not from the state of Illinois, I did notice we had a few people to register who were not from the state of Illinois. Um, Drop me a note and we can make sure that you get the information that you need in order to incorporate in your particular state. Every state is different, and I am willing to, walk with you to help you with your particular state's information. The overall principle is the same, but every state is different. All righty. And then for those of you who want to take a deeper dive, go all the way, we will be starting our course, 90 Days to a New Nonprofit. That course will start in July 18th, and go through October 18th. And we will take you through the steps of, I guess, from ideation, thinking about what concept you want, all the way to implementation. By the time you're done, you will have a legally compliant nonprofit organization. Not only will it be legally compliant, you will have completed all of your forms at the state and federal level. You will have been prepared for your first board of directors, have your bylaws in place. You will understand the lay of the land as far as your particular organization. You'll have a budget. You'll also be at a point where you learn how to pitch your organization and develop a fundraising plan. So I think we're giving really, really, really good value for the money. If you want to learn more about that, um, here here are links where you can just look at all of the descriptions, and then we will be opening the registration for the course on next week on July 1st, and the course itself will start on July 18th. All right, again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them and I will address them all at the end. The first question I think is pretty obvious, but sometimes it's not so obvious. Do you have a name for your initiative? That's really, really important. Why is it important? One, it distinguishes you from others, but two, it's the first in the process of giving you a legal um, definition, so to speak, giving you legal standing. The name in and of itself doesn't give you legal standing, but that's part of it, right? So if you do have a name picked out, or are you thinking of it, what is it? And as you think of your name, and even in the course, we'll go deeper, to help you think of names that will differentiate you in the marketplace. But think about, what it is that you're trying to do and what makes you different and make your name memorable, right? If your initiative is a new organization, have you conducted a name search within your state to see if it's available? So your initiative, it can be a new organization where you're starting from scratch, got a bunch of neighbors um, in the neighborhood, or you could have an existing organization, right? You might be doing a program or service, and it might be to your advantage to spin it off, right? I remember when I was working for Mount Sinai Hospital, working on, some of their expansion projects, we got to a point where we were looking at one of the initiatives, looking at all the public health programs. Mount Sinai Hospital, obviously focuses on medical things, right? They also had a number of grants that allowed them to do some public health initiatives. They decided that it would be in their best interest to take all of those public health programs and put them all under a single department, but then also roll it out, right? Spin it off into its own entity. Why? Because there were a number of grant sources that they could take advantage of that the hospital couldn't. So, the hospital couldn't qualify for some of the state public health programs. So that spinning off allowed them to take advantage of not only funding sources for hospitals, but it helped them to expand their base of funding into the public service arena. So if you are running an organization and you see it might be to your advantage to spin off, a program into its separate entity, that might be something you consider. But for the most part, just starting the organization itself is going to require a name search. You want to make sure that the name you're using has not been taken in your state. Question 4. What community are you considering working in? So, for those of you who are not from the city of Chicago, this is a map of our various communities, right? And each of these communities tracks to a certain group of census tracts and census block groups and all that good stuff. And it also helps you to understand, what your boundaries are. So you might be considering looking at, just focusing on one neighborhood. You might be considering focusing on a certain block group where you see an extremely high need for what it is you're doing. You might be considering focusing on several neighborhoods, several community areas, right? So this map, or you might have similar maps, will help you visualize what that area looks like that you're going to be serving. And when you think about your service area, also think about, your capacity to reach all of these areas too. Question 5. How would you describe the community? And the community can be, that particular area that you're going to serve, right? Think of things like where it's located, the population, the racial makeup, the income levels, the education levels. Also, think about things like access. And when we say access, in this particular case, I'm thinking about access through, say, public transportation, through major streets and thoroughfares and highways and all of that stuff. So you really, really want to think about this holistically. If you are located in a certain area, how are people going to get to you? How are you going to get to the people you serve? Question 6. What's the current situation? So in that case, we're looking at things like, what's going on in the community. And when we say what's going on, we know our community's got a heck of a lot going on from many different standpoints. If your particular focus is education, you're going to be looking at quote unquote what's going on as it relates to education. So, what are some of those issues that are impacting education, our children's ability to learn, our children's access to high quality education, our youth access to college, and all of that good stuff? What are some of the current events that are going on that impact the work that you're doing? Or what are some of the current events that you could influence, right? So, what is happening in the news right about now? And that could be for anything. What is happening in the news? Those things that you have no control over, but they can impact your ability to do your job and do it well. Question 7. Are there other people or other organizations in the community that are addressing the issues? If so, how many? How many of them? What are their names? Where are they located? What services are they providing? Who's providing those services? What's the quality of those services? There are people who would say that some of our communities are oversaturated with nonprofit organizations, yet we still have strong need. Is that because the quality of the services may not be what they could be? Could it be a matter of capacity? Could it be a matter of the organizations not collaborating in a way such that they're not duplicating services? But the first question becomes, what's the quality of what's being offered already? Do you see any gaps? There could be several organizations that are offering after school programs. But there may be some organizations that are serving after school programs for uh, primary grades. There could be some organizations that are focusing in, for people who are in high school. After you map out those services, that is, look at who's doing what and where and who they serve, do you see any gaps? Is there a gap in people who need to be served, like children of a certain age, children with certain needs, right? Children who, and just because children excel does not mean that they don't have needs. They just have different needs, right? So, whatever those needs are that you see are not being served, that's a good place to consider, assuming that you have the capacity and ability. That's a good place to consider starting, where are the gaps? Question 11. Given the number of people in the community who may need the services you want to provide and the number of organizations who provide the services, is there still a need for you to start a new organization in that community? There are people who look at that and say, you know what? There's so many people already doing this work. Maybe we don't need to start a new organization. Maybe what we need to do is, develop a strategy where we're collaborating with other actors in the community and we can, provide a service. And then after that need is fulfilled, we can walk away. Question 12. What are some of the issues or problems that you would like to address? And in many cases, those issues or problems that you would like to address, those come out of a natural tendency. We all have passions about certain issues and certain problems. You might consider addressing issues that you have some familiarity with, or areas that you have a strong skill set. If you are neither very familiar or neither have a strong skill set, but you got lots and lots of passion, make sure that you surround yourself with people that you can trust, to carry out your vision. Because just because you surround yourself with people who are skilled doesn't necessarily mean that they will, one, have the same vision and passion for this particular entity that you want to start. And then sometimes it doesn't mean that you can trust them. There are people who are around us just to get what they can get, and then they go and take our ideas and exploit them. So be very careful about partnering, but and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But question 12, some of the issues or problems that you would like to address. Again, sometimes we address the issues just because we may have a family member and involved in this, and we might not necessarily have the expertise, but again, we have the passion and we want to get it done. Sometimes we have the skill, right? Who else cares about these issues? That's one way to find out who might fund you, one way to find out who might partner with you. That's one way to find out who might help you start, one way to find out where you might find your other board members. But it's very, very, very important to find out who cares about the issue. And just because people care about the issue doesn't mean they care about it because they love the issue. Sometimes they care about it because it's an issue that they are against, right? So you need to understand who cares about the issues and what their positions are on the issues. Who are some of your potential partners? Your potential partners can be individuals. Your potential partners can be other organizations. Just think about, again, who cares about the issues, who has similar passions, who has similar work ethics, who has similar visions, who are people who you might work well with. And that good thing. And values, let's not forget about values. Core values are extremely important. You may have the same goals and objectives, but if you have different values, that's a recipe for conflict coming down the road. Question 15. Who could be a part of your leadership team, right? Who has similar values, who has similar visions, who has similar work ethic, who would be willing to carry their load. And in the beginning, believe you me, it will be a heavy load and all of that good stuff. Who are your potential clients? And when we talk about clients, who will you serve? Who is your target? How many people will you serve? As much as you would like to serve 1,000 people first go around, yeah, I guess you could serve 1,000 people if you have large scale events. But if you really, really, really want to go deep, how many people are we talking about that you can go deep enough where you can really make an impact, where you can help move them from where they are to the next level in their lives? Question 18. In what activities will your organization be engaged? Will you be distributing food? Will you have workshops? Will you have training? Um, and then when we talk about workshops and training, and those could be, slightly different. I guess workshops can be training, but not all training is a workshop. When I speak to workshop, I'm speaking of hands-on activities where people are learning, but they're doing at the same time, putting their hands on something while someone is lecturing or demonstrating. Whereas a seminar, you're just kind of lecturing, right? So, again, what activities will you be doing? Canvassing to try to make people aware of, the issues. Whatever it is that you are, whatever type of program you're envisioning, that's going to determine the activities you engage. So you're going to think about the programs, but you're also going to think about what it is you're trying to achieve. And then based on what's going on in the community, what you're trying to achieve, your goals and objectives, those are going to drive the activities, because the activities are going to be a way for you to meet your goals and objectives. So then when we talk about programs and services, many of us use programs and services interchangeably, but I, being the one who splits hairs, I just want to help you think about, programs and services. When you look at programs, you are making an intentional move to change people or change the environment, the physical environment. There's definitely a before and after. You're looking at the before. This is the current state of the community. This is the current state of the people we serve. And if we provide interventions, they will go from where they are to the next phase in their lives. And we have goals and objectives, we have metrics, and we have desired outcomes. The outcomes, what will change. A service, on the other hand, we know is good for you, but we don't have that same intentionality about making change. We just provide the service. Sometimes the service can support a program, or sometimes the service can stand alone. Case in point, my favorite example: programs and services, a food kitchen versus a diet. When we have our food pantries, we tend to give out food. We're not necessarily tracking anything more than who picked up the food, where they live, what their zip code is. Nothing else. We know that the food is good for them, but we don't know how much they weighed before they came in. We certainly don't know how much they weighed after they ate the food. We don't know what their health status is or whatever. A diet, there's some intentionality about change. You might be on a diet so that you can reduce your blood pressure, reduce your blood sugar, reduce your weight. So we set goals and objectives around those things. We can measure how close we are because we're taking our blood pressure, we're measuring our blood sugar, and we're standing on the scales. Question 20: how will your organization differentiate itself in the market? And this question is really, really, really important in communities that seem to be oversaturated with nonprofits and churches. There's a whole lot of people out there doing the work. How do you make yourself different? Even though you might be also, serving youth, you might also be doing job training. What makes your organization, your approach different? Question 21: will your organization or its members require any licenses, certifications, or permits in order to offer certain services? You might find that, in certain fields like education, healthcare, social work. All right. And those licenses can also, even if they're not required, if you get them, those can be ways to differentiate yourself in the market and convey quality. Question 22: what resources do you need? What people are you going to need? That could be board members, that could be staff. What are those positions? What roles are they going to play? What supplies are you going to need? Um, if you're going to be based in a physical location, where's that location? Is it suitable for the activities that you're going to be engaging in? If you're going to be engaging in activities that require confidentiality, make sure that that location has private rooms. And I would hope that anything that we do, you're maintaining confidentiality, because we would not want to be sharing, our clients' information with others willy-nilly without their permission. What money are you going to need? And how much money you need by establishing a budget. So, based on all of those things you want to achieve, the resources you're going to need, how much is each one of those resources going to cost? How much or how many of those resources do I need to get started right about now? Or what things can I wait for later? So, you might want to get a startup budget as well as a budget, for the ongoing, for the dream itself. Not trying to make things complicated, but, just get you in the habit of always thinking forward as well as being pragmatic. Question 24: what education levels and skill sets are required among the board and staff to run the programs that you have in mind? All right, so if you want to differentiate yourself in the marketplace, one way of doing it is make sure you have highly skilled people. And when I say highly skilled, they don't necessarily have to have 50 million degrees and all of that stuff, but they should have significant experience and they should have a track record of success. And you determine what that is. Question 25: what will change for the community and for the people you serve as a direct result of your programs and services? You're not trying to take credit for something that would have happened without you, right? What exactly are you doing? And when I say you, I'm talking about your organization. What will your organization be doing that will move people from point A to point B? And what will that change be? So that will be an outcome. Question 26: how are you going to be able to measure that change? Some things are not readily measurable, so we have to create instruments that will help us measure them, doing surveys that help us better understand attitudes. We can also do before and after. How have attitudes changed? How has Reading ability change, you can measure test scores, you can measure things like attendance. All right. So again, whatever your goals and objectives are and the change you want to see, make sure you have some metrics that will help you know whether or not you are moving from where you are, from where your clients are, from where your community is to the next level of development. What does success look like for you? And that's going to look different for everyone. And that's going to vary based on who you are, on your capabilities, on your capacity, the stage of your growth, and all of that good stuff. So you have to determine, what does that look like now? Question 28. How are you going to evaluate success? Sometimes evaluating success can be just as simple as a before and after picture. If you are into gardening and beautification, your success, you might take an empty lot that has trash and people hanging out, take a picture of that condition. Then after you get done, you take a picture after. That's success. That's a before and after. Sometimes it could be a little bit more complicated. It could be a pre-test and a post-test. It could be looking at children's scores, their reading scores and how they change over time, their math scores, how they change over time. Whatever it is, how are you going to evaluate it? That's critical. And then how are you going to collect the data? And how are you going to use the information in order to evaluate your process? So you start off with your program design, then you implement your program. That is, you're actually doing the activities that you said you would do. Then you evaluate, and then you take the information and you try to make your program stronger. So that's continuous improvement. In order to do that, we have to do more research, and then we feed that research and the results into our program design, and then that cycle repeats itself. Question 30. Is there demand for this new initiative? If you're anything like I am, and I think you are in this regard because 90% of us are, that's not scientific, I'm just saying it. But most of us, we know what the community needs. We know what people need, right? Just knowing what people need and just having the fact that the need is there does not mean that there's a demand for it. Just because we build it doesn't mean that people want it. You know, people may not demand, may not want what it is that we have. So we need to do some sort of market analysis to understand whether or not there is some demand. That is, once we go through all of this expense and trouble of building this organization, starting this new organization, will people come? Will people use our services? Will funders give to us? Will we be able to attract the right kind of staff? Will we be able to attract the right board members? All right. So, question 31, given all the work that's involved, are you still committed to going through this process? And that's a question that each and every one of you would have to answer for yourselves. All right. So if there are any questions that you have, feel free to post. I'm going to go through the chat. Okay, the audio is breaking up. Okay, I'm sorry about that, Joel. Um, yeah, I need to work on my bandwidth over here. Oh, Sharonda, you're from Jacksonville. We're from Chicago. Thanks for joining us. Okay, Tanisha, can the location be shared with for a for-profit entity? All right, Tanisha, can you go into a little bit more detail? I'm not quite sure what you're asking when you say that. Can the location be shared with for-profit? From a legal standpoint, can the nonprofit be housed? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, the nonprofit can be housed in a for-profit building. That's not a problem. Because where you're located is not going to necessarily determine your tax status. Yeah, the things that determine whether or not we're tax exempt are, the activities in which we're going to be engaged. We got to make sure that we're engaged in activities that are deemed tax exempt. I'm assuming the nonprofit, if it's housed in an area for a for profit space or a shared space, I'm sure that whoever is collecting rent, um, if they are a for profit, they're making their profit off of your rent, but your rent doesn't determine, and your location itself doesn't determine whether or not you're tax exempt. Okay, and Tanisha, I see you're still typing as well. Okay, and if anyone else has any questions, please feel free to share your your questions. And Crystal, I see that you have a question that you're typing as well. Okay, so Crystal, you said I had a question. What do you still have the question? And if so, what is that question? Okay, what if one owns the for profit and also founded the nonprofit? Can they still be? Yeah, they can be. Yeah. Okay, so I'm reading Tanisha's question. Her question is, what if one owns the for profit and also founded the nonprofit? Can they still be housed in the same space, or is it a conflict of interest? Being in the same space in and of itself does not cause a conflict of interest, especially if you're the owner. The things that could cause a conflict of interest would be if you are doing things with the nonprofit that could enrich the business, right? So your legal structure is going to have to be in such a way that you're operating the nonprofit at arm's length, meaning it's independent. And I guess the owner of that business can also be a board member, and I guess they can also control it through having a majority interest. But it is, and when I say majority interest, I'm talking about a majority of the board members represented. You just have to make sure that the transactions that you engage in are separate to the extent that this nonprofit, okay, so if they are paying rent to the for profit and that for profit happens to be on the board, has some board representation, then you must disclose that in your papers when you do the form 1023, and you also have to disclose it annually on your form 990. if you get to a point where there's so many times that you have to disclose conflicts of interest, then that could be a red flag. Some conflicts of interest can't be avoided, right? Especially if you're in a situation where you're just starting out, it's more advantageous for you to some rent from someone on the board. If they can offer the rent at discount and not a profit, that's okay. It needs to be disclosed. You need to have a conflict of interest policy and it needs to be disclosed. But again, if you get to the point where there's so many conflicts of interest where it raises a question as to why you're in business as a nonprofit. Are you in business to enrich the officers, or are you in business to actually do this charitable work? All right. What if the for-profit funds the nonprofit like a social enterprise? Yeah, yeah, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. That happens all the time. You'll probably have to create a LLC. You could do an LLC between the two entities, and then depending on how you want to structure it, the nonprofit could be a subsidiary of the for-profit or vice versa. And Crystal was saying that she can't hear me on the phone. I'm not quite sure what I can do about that. Okay, I can't hear you on my phone. Does having the word foundation in your name automatically mean nonprofit? We are learning about 501c3s. Um, Typically, every organization that I've heard that had the name foundation in it was a nonprofit, but not every organization that has the word foundation in it gives grants. All right. I thought I saw another question. I see where Joel is typing. Okay, so Joel, I'm waiting on you to type. I know there's probably a delay. And Crystal, I need to figure out, what the problem is with the phone. All right. So what type of tools or research do you recommend when picking a location? Are there benefits to picking a low income community? Okay, first off, Joel, I think that's a really good question. So what that is a very good question. So if you are doing something, say in affordable housing, definitely you need to be in a low to moderate income community in order to take advantage of many of the tax breaks and many of the grant sources that are available to develop that housing. If you are dealing with certain education programs, yes, it's in your advantage to picking a low to moderate income community. In fact, many state and federal programs, and even many privately funded programs, they prioritize low income communities. And if you're a for profit, again, there's some tax advantages to picking low income communities. You might be able to get tax credits for being located in certain communities. So, how would you go about? Oh, thank you. I'm so glad that problem has been solved, Crystal. Okay, so how would you go about selecting a location? I would, again, it depends on one, what it is I'm doing, but also having worked in commercial real estate development in a former life, I would do my research on the community itself. So that means looking at the demographics of the community. Who is it? Who would my ideal client be, and where might they be clustered? So that's going to require a lot of things. That's going to require looking at the census tract data, and you can go to census.gov and you can actually do zip code maps, and they can do a rundown of the area. If you want to be a little bit more specific, you can create your own maps in census.gov, where you can really, really, really get a sense for where those people that you're looking for are most likely to live. Things like, where the most veterans likely to live. You can even, do maps and you can code the income. So you could even look at the income levels at the block level, at the census tract level. All right. So obviously you want to go to where people, okay, in your case, Joel, you're doing housing. If you want to do affordable housing, you want to go in those areas where the people are who fit the criteria for subsidized housing. So you get a good understanding for where those people are clustered by looking at census tract data, or by, geocoding certain um, addresses. Then you might want to also look at how that area has been growing over the years. What's the potential for growth? Looking at it from a physical site feasibility, looking at the access points. Is it served by public transportation? Is it served by major streets? Is it served by expressways? What shopping is in the area? What schools are in the area? That kind of thing. So yeah, so you understand real estate, so you're going to be looking at the location for your particular office, like you'd be, trying to locate real estate, for yourself. Does that answer your question? One, you want to go to where people are. Two, you want to look at the feasibility from a physical standpoint, that is, the access to transportation, shopping, and all that other stuff. You also want to see who else is doing what you're doing. So you might want to find a map of affordable housing in the city of Chicago, assuming this is in the city of Chicago. See where the affordable housing is concentrated, and try not to go where the affordable housing is concentrated. Go to a place where there's a need, but it's not a high concentration. But you also want to be in a place that has promise for growth, if that makes sense. And Willie, I see you are typing your question. I missed your answer to Tanisha's question regarding a conflict of interest if a for-profit social enterprise funds the for-profit, then I guess the nonprofit. Thanks for letting me know, Joel. All right. So Willie, there are instances where there could be a conflict of interest, right? If you're in a situation where you are renting, okay, suppose you're the owner, you own the space, right? You operate your business in a space, but you also operate your nonprofit. The nonprofit could either not pay rent, or the nonprofit could pay rent. If the nonprofit is not paying rent, you probably would not have a terrible problem with conflict of interest. You probably um, you might want to disclose it. You know, it's not going to impact the finances of the nonprofit, but still, it's good to disclose. If you are paying rent to the owner, if you own the building, the nonprofit rents from you, you can't offer the rent at a higher than market rate. It needs to be market rate or discount, and you do have to disclose it. And when you form that nonprofit organization, you have to disclose the relationship between the nonprofit and the developer, which in this case is probably going to be the owner of the building, as well as someone who is on the board. All right, great, Tanisha. Thanks for stopping in. I'm hopefully going to figure this out where we can talk to one another and not have to chat. All right, so yeah, Willie, it would have to be disclosed, right? And then and that will be on your form 1023. So there's always a disclosure. You have to disclose who you're renting from, the relationships between the developer of the space and the nonprofit. So you will also disclose that on your 990 every year. You also have to have a conflict of interest policy in place. Okay, Shara, bear with me, Shara. Can I see questions 5 through 9? Um, there will be a recording, Shara, where we go line by line. So I think that might probably be better for you. Um, but yeah, you and then too, Shara, did you download the workbook? If you downloaded the workbook, all those questions, every question that we went over is in that workbook. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. It's great to have you back, Tanisha. Okay, so okay, great. Yeah. Okay, I'm so glad, Shara. So the purpose for this is to kind of have you listen as you read the workbook. You can kind of get some creative juices going as to how you're going to answer those questions. And there will be a recording available. All righty. Are there any more questions? Willie, Cole, and Tanisha, you're still typing? Again, our church has a nonprofit located in its building. Is there a conflict? All righty. As long as okay, if the church has board members on that nonprofit and the nonprofit is paying rent, I have a feeling that that nonprofit is not paying rent. I would probably disclose it, but um, the church is not profiting, is not getting any funding. I just think it's good practice to disclose things like that. And the good thing about the churches don't have to, churches may be 501c3s, but they don't have to file Form 990s because they're religious organizations. But the if the organization is filing Form 990 and they're disclosing that they're renting from the church, that's something that probably goes in the back of the mind of the IRS, but it should not be problematic. Okay, yeah, that should not be a problem at all, Willie. And then, disclosing it and indicating that no rent is paid. And in fact, I think that actually looks good, right? But you could also, as that organization grows, that organization can also, when they do their 990s, do their income statements, they can use the value of that rent as an in-kind donation, which is good. All right. Yes, yes, yes. By all means. Okay, guys, are there any questions? Again, I set aside 90 minutes. I didn't think that this would go for 90 minutes, but I'm definitely available if you guys have more questions. Okay, so Tanisha and Joel, you've got more questions? Okay. Yeah, the delay. I'm just waiting for the notes to come through. Are there any additional dates for the other two complimentary sessions? I am having some conflicting commitments, but would like to attend or watch a recording as possible. Okay. So there are dates. Hold on. I'm going to put that on the screen. Just bear with me. All right. So those are the upcoming events. And since you registered for this, Tanisha, I'm going to send you the Google form that allows you to sign up to be notified of all these events. I'll send you that. And then I will also send you invitations to the events. So I'll do that for everybody who is here. You know, everybody who is signed up is not necessarily signed up for the reminders. Okay, I see where Joel is typing. Okay, and you're welcome, Tanisha. Okay. Are there any other questions? I see that Joel is still typing. All right. Hold on. Okay, one last question. I set up my nonprofit during COVID and I got my 501c3, but did not start doing anything with it. I had to reapply for my 501c3 status because I did not file the 990 form, but I got it reinstated. So now I am trying to move forward. What courses would you recommend? Now, University of Illinois, they do have a certificate in nonprofit, where you can take any 3 courses and get your certificate. So they have courses on finance, courses on strategic management, board development, etc., etc. I think that's a pretty good program. The Axelson Center, I know they have courses from time to time as well. Northwestern, Kellogg School, they have courses as well. It seems to me Uh, what I yeah, in addition to courses, I can recommend to you, and I'll be doing another course later, but I'm focusing on this course for starting a nonprofit. I will be doing a course on how to create a sustainable organization, which will include an assessment, an organizational assessment where you can see what best practices are and see how you line up with those best practices. And that those results will help you understand the strengths and weaknesses of where you are and to chart a course of action. If and I also, coach people through this. If you feel like you could benefit from a coach, the first thing I would do with you is listening to, what it is you want to do next, but also do an assessment and we can figure out a roadmap there. Um, you can also join the nonprofit Utopia community. So those are different avenues, but just listening to where you are, I would start with the assessment. I would probably also do what we call a program logic model, where you can really flesh out what it is, what it is you're trying to achieve, your goals and objectives and activities and all that stuff. And you can flesh out your program from there. Okay, is that helpful, Joel? Okay, and Arnetta, thank you so much. Do you see do you see a link to the workbook? And in answer to your question, there is a recording, but also if you see the workbook, you can download that and I will send out the recording after we get off. So you can hear in one ear and see, as you write your answers out. All right. Yeah, Joel, it'll be great. It'll be great to see you again. Is the online course synchronous? If so, what time of the day? No, it's actually asynchronous. Okay. And for people who may or may not know, okay, when you have online courses, they can be synchronous where everybody is online at the same time, or they can be asynchronous, meaning that you take the course at your own pace. The way this is set up, we will be dripping out lessons every week for about 12 weeks, and you can take those lessons at your own pace. We're going to be introducing something new every week. So by the time you get through that 12th week, you will have done everything that you need to do to become a legally um, a legal organization that is ready to raise funds. So you'll be compliant on state side as well as the federal side, as well as you know how to pitch to funders. Okay, so Arnetta and Tanisha are typing. You're welcome, Tanisha. Oh, well, I love that you love it, Arnetta. All right, Arnetta, are you from Chicago? I didn't catch whether you were from Chicago or from another state. If you're from another state, I'm going to have to get you some information that's specific to your state. And yeah, the way the course is set up, that even though we're going to kind of focus on the state of Illinois, there are links to every state agency, all around the country, every state agency, the people that deal with starting new nonprofits. Okay. Okay, Arnetta, you're gonna be in Chicago July 10th to 13th. You scheduled that on purpose because I'm not gonna be I'm not gonna be around. Shoot. Um, but yeah, okay. So yeah, I will make sure that you get um, the answers that you need for Maryland. All righty. Are there any other questions? I am so enjoying this, y'all. Thank you so much for showing up. You all are making my day. I love it, love it, love it. Where's the workbook? Okay, so it's not showing. Let me see if I can upload the file again. Where's the workbook? Where's the workbook? Okay, there it is. Before you start your nonprofit. Oh, you're welcome, Tanisha. Quite welcome. Yeah, I'm going to try to set this up next week so that we can talk to one another. It goes a lot faster, I think, a conversation versus typing. Oh, okay. I'm glad. Arnetta, I'm so glad that you said the timing is perfect. I thought about not doing this over the summer. I didn't think people would be focused on starting a new nonprofit over the summer, but I've been putting this off for forever. I said, it's now or never. And I'm glad at least one person thinks that this is perfect timing. So thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate knowing that. Okay, great. See, God is good. God is awesome. Like I said, I was not going to do this because I thought people would be focusing on enjoying their summers. And and also it's been my observation that over time we're so ingrained to our school schedules. Our brains tend to check in late August, early September, and then over the summer we kind of relax. But I'm glad that this works. Okay. Okay, so Arnetta, what kind of organization are you starting? Oh yeah, this is perfect time because you will have gotten everything in order, and you'll be ready for all those applications. Yeah, because like I said, there is a part where we're gonna show people how to do a pitch for funders, as well as do a oh, my words are escaping my brain. I can see the words that I want to say. But a case for support. Y'all got to forgive me. Forgive me for that. But yeah, we'll be doing beauty and transportation. That's it. Okay, beauty and transportation for whom, Arnetta? This is interesting. Oh, okay. I totally get it, Joel. Yeah, both my parents or teachers. Yeah, so you're like, this is the best time for me to get my own stuff done. Okay, good. All right, so this I'm glad it's working out. Yeah, and then I don't know, I got curious to know what Arnetta's doing. She's saying beauty and transportation. I just want to get a sense for beauty and transportation for whom. And she and bear with us while she's typing. And in the meantime, if others have questions, let me know. Alrighty. Are there any other questions? I know Arnetta is formulating her question. Okay, a transit service in honor of my brother who was trying to cross the highway that's 1 mile from the subway station, but unfortunately got killed by a speeding truck. Oh my goodness. But sometimes tragedy spurs us on to do great things. Great things. So is the purpose of your organization, all right, is transit service and honor. So are you working with low income people to help them get to jobs? Is that what where the beauty comes in? I guess it'll be, if you take the class, it'll be worth it for us to flesh out what it is you're doing. Oh my goodness, that is terrible. Oh, beautiful. I have a doctorate degree in cosmetology. That's beautiful. And this is going to be a nonprofit. There may be someone I can also introduce you to who is she's got an image business. It's a for-profit business, but she still might be somebody you might find interesting in talking to. Oh, you're state president under the National Beauty Cultures League. That sounds very exciting. So you're going to do a transportation business and cosmetology. How do we make that work for nonprofit? And then if there's anybody who's still here, if you have any suggestions, feel free to chime in. Because I can see you going a number of different ways. When I hear the speeding truck, I think of an organization that's similar to like a Mothers Against Drunk Driving type of organization. When I see the cosmetology, I see I see a potential for training people in that area, you know, as part of a workforce development program or as part of the need to maintain safety and standards in the industry. Yeah, there's a number of possibilities. Does anyone have any thoughts about the possibilities for Arnetta? That definitely sounds exciting. And two, when we do the course, there's also going to be an online community that's attached to it. Now, this will be separate from the nonprofit utopia, the overall community. If you do get the course, you get membership in that. But there's also a course specific community, that's just focusing on the course. Oh no, there are many who travel the same road. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so we'll have an online community in this course where we can exchange ideas. It won't be just me giving ideas, it'll be all of us. So it sounds to me, okay, so it sounds to me like you might be interested in some advocacy work, trying to make sure that the roads are safer. Make sure that the roads are safer for pedestrians. I had to start with two routes, stopping at gas station and 7-Elevens. Okay, yes. Okay. Either way it goes, it sounds very, very, very interesting. Ah, I like that. Maybe she could provide some certification programs related to, is that what, cosmetology, Joel? Yeah, that's good. Since people have to be licensed cosmetologists. Yeah. And get relationships with the state, right? In the state of Illinois, we got, oh, I forget the name of the what the organization is, the agency. It used to be Department of Professional Regulations, but I think they merged with another group. But yeah, we do have state agencies that regulate various professions. And given that you are a licensed cosmetologist, being able to offer classes to people so that they can get their certifications. Oh, wow. Oh, that's excellent. Arnetta says, I've talked to the Department of Transportation. They've offered funding if I obtain a nonprofit, which means you might be in a position to expedite your application, right? So if you got a funding source waiting for you when you do an application for nonprofit, they they can submit a letter, and we could make sure that that's in your packet, and you can request expedited funding. They'll put your application at the top of the heap while everybody else has to wait 6 to 9 months to a year and a half. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like we're on the verge of making something good come of this tragedy. Thank God you're keeping your brother's legacy alive. Neither can I, Arnetta. I think we got a lot to talk about. And I think, based on this group of people just assembled here on this call, this is going to be a great group, a great supportive group for you to also run ideas by. All right. So you guys, it's 10:30. We've taken up the 90 minutes. Are there any other questions before we sign off? And again, I just want to say thank you all so much. You could have been doing a number of other things, but you spent time with me. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Tanisha, for that. Thank you, Arnetta, for that. Yeah, I'm not trying to impose my ideas on you. We do have a format that you can use to brainstorm some ideas, flesh them out for yourself. All righty. I I shall. Thank you so much, Tanisha. Thank you, Arnetta. And with that said, again, I want to say thank you to everyone. This has been a wonderful 90 minutes for me. Thank you for spending your time with me. And with that, I'm going to sign off. And I will make sure that you guys get a link to sign up for the reminders. The course will be open for registration on July 1st. And then we will, you'll have access to the course on the 18th. Thanks, Crystal. I appreciate that. You've been a wonderful, wonderful member of our online community from day one. All righty. Okay. So it doesn't look like anybody's writing. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. All right, you guys take care. Bye-bye.